When most people think of WWE, names like John Cena, The Undertaker, or Randy Orton immediately come to mind. Those long-standing icons who have defined eras and become household names. But wrestling's history is filled with many legendary figures who briefly passed through WWE, leaving only fleeting impressions before disappearing as if they were never really there. These aren't just random names. They include some of the biggest stars from ECW, WCW, independent circuits, and even Japan's rich wrestling scene. They brought unique styles, unforgettable moments, and sometimes even shook the industry. Yet their time in WWE was often surprisingly short. Whether due to timing, creative differences, or simply being ahead of their time, these wrestlers' brief WWE stints have become fascinating footnotes in wrestling history. So, if you think you know WWE inside and out, get ready. Wrestling Sphere is about to introduce you to 10 famous wrestlers you probably had no idea ever competed in WWE. Some of these stories might just blow your mind. 10. Mr. Wrestling. 2. John Walker, a legacy. Woven in mystery and mask. When people hear the name, Mr. Wrestling 2, they might not immediately connect him with WWE, but John Walker's story is one of the most fascinating and unique chapters in wrestling history. During the heyday of territorial wrestling in the 1970s and early 80s, the United States wrestling scene was divided into regions, each dominated by local heroes and legends. In the southeastern territories, particularly Georgia and Florida, John Walker reigned supreme as Mr. Wrestling 2, a masked enigma whose presence commanded respect and awe, the black and white mask wasn't just a costume or gimmick to Walker, it was his identity. It marked the line between his wrestling persona and his personal life. The mystery behind the mask created a fan connection that went beyond wins and losses. His classic wrestling style was technical yet hard-hitting, a blend that made him an unstoppable force in the ring. His popularity in those territories was so immense that he transcended wrestling fandom altogether, reaching political circles. Perhaps the most surprising and heartwarming element of his legacy is his unique relationship with President Jimmy Carter. Walker was Carter's favorite wrestler, a testament to how much his appeal reached beyond the usual wrestling fan base. Carter's invitation to the 1977 presidential inauguration was a rare honor for any athlete or entertainer, but it came with a caveat. The Secret Service insisted that Walker remove his mask for security clearance. Walker refused. To him, the mask was sacrosanct, a boundary between the man and the legend. The decision meant missing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet the president, but it underscored his commitment to his persona. Even though he never removed the mask that day, Walker shared a touching moment with Carter's mother, who was also a fan. This human interaction reflected the respect and warmth surrounding Walker's legacy, far from the usual backstage hustle and bustle of wrestling politics. Fast forward to 1984, when Vince McMahon Jr. bought Georgia Championship Wrestling, a major turning point in WWE history. As part of the acquisition, Mr. Wrestling 2 came along to the WWF, as WWE was then called. However, by this time, the man beneath the mask was past his prime. His movements were slower, his strikes less impactful, and he no longer fit into the fast-evolving style WWE was moving toward. His tenure in WWE was short, lasting less than a year before he quietly stepped away, closing a brief and largely forgotten chapter in the company's expansive history. Though often overlooked in the grand WWE narrative, Mr. Wrestling 2's story is a testament to the bygone era of territorial wrestling and a man who remained fiercely loyal to his identity, even in the face of presidential invitations and national spotlight. 9. Samoa Joe. From humble beginnings to wrestling royalty, Samoa Joe is a name synonymous with brutal dominance and technical prowess, especially for fans who followed TNA, now IMPA-CT Wrestling, and Ring of Honor throughout the 2000s. Known as the Samoan Submission Machine, Joe's cold, calculated style made him a force to be reckoned with. earning him legions of fans and a reputation as one of the best wrestlers outside WWE for years. But what surprises many fans is that Joe's first ever WWE appearance came years before he rose to wrestling superstardom. In March 2001, a young, relatively unknown Samoa Joe appeared on a little-known WWE secondary show called WWF Jacked. At this point, Joe was a much smaller, leaner athlete compared to the powerhouse he would become. His opponent that night was S.R. Rios, a wrestler whose career was already on the decline, making the match itself forgettable to many. This early appearance gave Joe little room to showcase the signature elements that would later define his legacy: the brutal chokeholds, the MMA-inspired offense, and the cold psychological mind games he would wield so effectively. It was simply a brief moment, almost like a footnote in WWE history, where a future legend was just starting out without much fanfare or spotlight. Reflecting on this contrast is fascinating. Here was a man who would later dominate rival promotions for years and shake the wrestling world. Yet at the start, he was just another young hopeful grinding away on the undercard of WWE's secondary programming. His story reminds us how even the most legendary careers can begin in the humblest and most unnoticed ways. It also highlights the complex nature of wrestling promotions and talent scouting, how sometimes the stars of tomorrow are passed over or overlooked until they prove their worth elsewhere. Samoa Joe's journey from a nobody on WWF Jacked to a dominant force in WWE after finally signing in 2015 is a powerful narrative about perseverance, growth, and the unpredictability of wrestling careers. 8. Bruiser Brody, the Wild Beast. Who roared briefly in WW, few wrestlers in history have inspired fear and awe quite like Bruiser Brody. With his wild mane of hair, ferocious intensity, and brutal brawling style, Brody was a force of nature during the 1970s and 80s. He was a nightmare opponent who embodied the raw, violent spirit of wrestling's territorial era. His popularity was especially strong in Japan, where he was revered as an unstoppable warrior, almost mythic in stature. Brody's career spanned nearly every major territory of his era, from NWA and AWA in the United States to world-class championship wrestling and the Japanese wrestling giants, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and All Japan Pro Wrestling. Remarkably, the one place many assumed he never set foot in was WWF. Yet, the truth is that Bruiser Brody did wrestle in WWE under Vince McMahon Sr.'s leadership. One of his most notable matches was against Bruno Sammartino, a company legend whose presence symbolized the WWF's golden age. A clash between Brody's wild brawling and Sammartino's powerhouse style was a dream matchup, with the potential to elevate Brody to mainstream stardom in the States. However, backstage tensions quickly derailed those possibilities. After an altercation with Gorilla Monsoon, a respected wrestler and backstage figure, Vince McMahon Sr. swiftly fired Brody. The firing was abrupt, and just like that, any chance for a longer WWE career vanished. Brody never returned to WWE, but he didn't need to. His legacy was already cemented elsewhere. Brody's brief and turbulent WWE stint adds a fascinating footnote to wrestling history. It highlights the clash of personalities and backstage politics that can make or break a wrestler's career, regardless of their talent or fan following. His enduring influence is visible in countless brawlers who followed, inspired by his wild style and unapologetic intensity. 7. The Fabulous Freebirds, Michael P.S. Hayes, Terry Gordy, Buddy Roberts. When you hear the name Michael P.S. Hayes, many WWE fans picture a charismatic backstage personality and skilled microphone worker. But few immediately recall his roots as the leader of one of wrestling's most influential tag teams, the Fabulous Freebirds. Alongside Terry Gordy and Buddy Roberts, Hayes helped form a trio that didn't just compete in the ring, they transformed the very essence of American tag team wrestling. Emerging in the late 1970s, the Freebirds weren't merely wrestlers. They were entertainers who injected a rebellious, rock and roll spirit into every aspect of their performance. What made the Freebirds revolutionary was their flair for showmanship and innovation. They were among the first to truly harness the power of entrance music, a now ubiquitous feature in wrestling that adds an extra layer of excitement and personality to every appearance. Their charismatic performances and electrifying presence redefined how tag teams engaged with fans. This combination of attitude and innovation made them pioneers, setting new standards for what a tag team could be. Their legendary feuds, especially with the iconic Von Erich family in Texas's World-Class Championship Wrestling, WCCW, became the stuff of wrestling lore. These battles were more than just athletic contests. They were emotionally charged storylines that captivated audiences, helping to shape the style and tone of Southern wrestling during its golden era. The Freebirds' ability to blend storytelling, intense rivalries, and showmanship made them unforgettable characters in wrestling history. When WWE, then known as WWF, entered the Rock and Wrestling Connection era in the mid-1980s, they sought out music-driven personalities who could capture the cultural zeitgeist of the time. The Fabulous Freebirds seemed like a perfect match. They signed with the company and made their debut with much anticipation. However, their stay in the WWE locker room was short-lived. According to backstage rumors, the Freebirds arrived late to a show and inadvertently offended Andre the Giant, whose backstage influence was legendary. Andre's cold glare reportedly made it clear that they weren't welcome, and instead of sparking a confrontation, the Freebirds quietly exited the WWF without much fanfare. 6. Christopher Daniels. Christopher Daniels, widely known by his ring name The Fallen Angel, has become a revered figure in the world of American independent wrestling. Over the past 2 decades, Daniels has crafted a reputation for excellence across numerous promotions, including Ring of Honor, ROH, and Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, TNA, now Impact Wrestling. Celebrated for his fluid in-ring style, technical prowess, and captivating storytelling, Daniels is the embodiment of what it means to be a consummate performer in the independent wrestling scene. However, few fans realize that his journey briefly intersected with WWE during the late 1990s, giving us a fascinating glimpse into the early stages of his career. Back in the late 90s, WWE was experimenting with several secondary television shows aimed at developing talent and building new stars. One such show was Shotgun Saturday Night, a late-night program that gave lesser-known wrestlers an opportunity to showcase their skills. It was here that Christopher Daniels appeared in enhancement matches, facing off against Taka Michinoku, a wrestler who himself was gaining recognition for his speed and technical skill. Although Daniels was booked to lose these matches, his performance did not go unnoticed. Even in a role designed to make others look strong, Daniels demonstrated his agility, control, and in-ring intelligence, hinting at the future success that awaited him. These early WWE appearances were brief and largely overlooked, but they were invaluable for Daniels. They provided him with critical exposure and experience on a global platform, allowing him to refine his craft against top-tier competition. Instead of chasing a long-term contract with WWE, Daniels made a conscious decision to carve his own path in the wrestling world. His choice to focus on the independent circuit rather than the WWE spotlight highlights a rare form of self-belief and dedication to his art. Over time, Daniels transformed into a beloved and respected icon on the indies, proving that you don't need WWE's backing to become legendary. The Fallen Angel's career is a testament to passion, resilience, and unwavering commitment to one's craft. Knowing that his incredible journey once briefly crossed paths with WWE only enriches the story of a wrestler who forged a unique and enduring legacy on his own terms. Christopher Daniels remains a shining example of how true greatness can be found beyond wrestling's biggest stage. 5. Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama. In the vibrant tapestry of Japanese professional wrestling, few characters have left as profound a mark as Tiger Mask. Unlike many wrestling personas born purely inside the squared circle, Tiger Mask originated from a late 1960s manga and anime series, a story about a masked wrestler who fought not just opponents, but for justice itself. The character's fusion of fantasy and heroism captured the imagination of a generation, and it wasn't long before New Japan Pro Wrestling, NJPW, Japan's premier wrestling promotion, decided to bring this beloved figure to life. The man who stepped into the mask and defined the persona was Satoru Sayama. His arrival in the wrestling world heralded a seismic shift in style and perception. Sayama was not just a wrestler, he was a revolutionary who reshaped the cruiserweight division with his combination of precision, speed, and breathtaking aerial maneuvers. At a time when heavyweight brawlers dominated, Sayama introduced a dazzling hybrid of martial arts agility and technical wrestling that elevated lighter wrestlers to main event status. What makes Sayama's journey even more compelling is his surprising, often overlooked stint in WWE, then known as the World Wrestling Federation, WWF. In the early 1980s, NJPW and WWE enjoyed a working relationship that allowed talent exchanges, and Sayama made multiple appearances at Madison Square Garden, wrestling in front of the most passionate and scrutinizing crowd in American wrestling. For American fans used to a more methodical, power-driven style, Sayama's lightning-fast offense was nothing short of a revelation. His matches were a blur of high-flying moves, martial arts strikes, and flawless technique that challenged and expanded the audience's understanding of what wrestling could be. Though his tenure in WWE was brief, his impact lingered, a fresh breeze blowing through the rigid structures of the era's wrestling styles. Today, the Tiger Mask persona has been carried on by multiple wrestlers, each adding their own chapters to the legend. But for purists and historians, Satoru Sayama remains the original Tiger Mask, the man who turned fiction into reality and brought a burst of artistry and innovation to the wrestling world, including a surprising and influential chapter right in the heart of WWE's sacred grounds. 4. Kevin Von Erich. In the storied history of Texas wrestling, the Von Erich family stands as a towering institution, a dynasty whose impact goes far beyond the squared circle. The Von Erichs were more than just wrestlers. They were legends who helped shape the wrestling culture of an entire region, particularly through their work in the Dallas-based promotion World Class Championship Wrestling WCCW. Among this iconic family, Kevin Von Erich holds a special place, not only as the last surviving member of the original wrestling clan, but also as a beloved figure whose image and legacy remain etched into the memories of fans from the 1980s and beyond. Kevin was instantly recognizable, with his flowing blonde hair and athletic, chiseled physique. But perhaps the most unique aspect of his in-ring persona was his barefoot wrestling style. Unlike most wrestlers who wore boots or wraps for protection and style, Kevin chose to wrestle with bare feet, a decision that set him apart visually and added a gritty edge to his offense. This barefoot approach tied him more closely to his Texas roots, symbolizing a raw, no-nonsense fighting spirit that perfectly matched the Southern wrestling tradition he represented. His matches were hard-hitting affairs, but it was his charisma and undeniable heart that truly elevated him from a skilled athlete to a legend in the eyes of wrestling fans. Much of Kevin Von Erich's career was spent loyally working for WCCW, a promotion run by his own family. There, he was central to some of the most intense and emotionally charged feuds of the era. Perhaps none was as memorable or defining as his war against the Fabulous Freebirds, a rebellious and rock and roll-infused trio who clashed fiercely with the Von Erichs. These battles combined athleticism, storytelling, and deep regional pride, captivating audiences and defining an entire era of Southern wrestling. Few outside Texas know that Kevin briefly wrestled in WWE. In 1980, during a short visit to New York, Kevin stepped into the legendary Madison Square Garden to face Johnny Rodz, a respected veteran. Kevin won decisively, proving the talent that made him a star in Texas. But this moment was fleeting, and he soon returned to the territory where his family's legacy was strongest. Kevin Von Erich's brief WWE appearance is a poignant reminder of his reach, a Texas wrestling icon standing under wrestling's biggest lights, even if only for a moment. It reflects an era when territorial loyalty was paramount, and crossing into the national spotlight wasn't always the path chosen by regional legends. His story is one of family, loyalty, and enduring pride, the heart of a dynasty that still resonates deeply with wrestling fans today. 3. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin Sullivan is a name that resonates deeply with wrestling fans who lived through the wild, often chaotic days of WCW in the 1990s. Known for his dark, mysterious persona and as the creative force behind some of WCW's most unforgettable storylines, Sullivan was much more than just a wrestler. He was a visionary storyteller who wasn't afraid to push the boundaries of what professional wrestling could be. His leadership of the eerie Dungeon of Doom faction, an eerie and cult-like group bent on destruction, cemented his place as one of the most unique figures in wrestling history. But Sullivan's journey to that cult status began in a far humbler place: the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, WWF, the precursor to today's WWE, in the 1970s. Back then, Sullivan was a babyface mid-card wrestler, a hard-working and passionate performer with undeniable skill and fire. He competed in an era that placed a premium on size and imposing physical presence. Standing shorter than many of his peers, Sullivan often found himself overlooked by WWE brass, who favored towering athletes for their main events. This bias against his stature made it difficult for him to break through in the company, no matter how hard he worked or how compelling his performances were. Rather than settle for a limited role, Sullivan made the bold choice to leave WWE and seek opportunities where his creativity and character work could flourish. This move was pivotal, as it led him to World Championship Wrestling, WCW, where he truly came into his own. In World Championship Wrestling, Sullivan's mind for storytelling and character development flourished. He created deeply layered, sometimes unsettling storylines that blurred the lines between fantasy and reality, bringing a theatrical and psychological element to wrestling that few had explored before. Sullivan's career is a powerful reminder that success in wrestling doesn't necessarily require a long tenure in WWE. While his time in the company was brief and largely forgotten, it laid the groundwork for a far more influential and enduring legacy outside of WWE's spotlight. Today, Kevin Sullivan is remembered not only as a skilled wrestler, but as one of wrestling's most original and creative minds, someone who found his true voice beyond WWE and left a lasting mark on the industry through passion, innovation, and a touch of madness. 2. Public Enemy, Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge. When talking about the raw, unfiltered spirit of hardcore wrestling in the 1990s, few names resonate as powerfully as Public Enemy. The team of Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge was a defining force during the early days of Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW, a promotion that shattered wrestling conventions and pushed the boundaries of what fans expected from the sport. Public Enemy wasn't about fancy holds or technical wrestling mastery. Their matches were a controlled chaos, violent, unpredictable, and absolutely thrilling. They were pioneers of hardcore wrestling's wild use of weapons, turning every bout into a brawl that felt more like a street fight than a traditional wrestling match. Their anarchic style, combined with their ability to connect with the crowd's hunger for something rebellious and raw, elevated them to legendary status within ECW's passionate fanbase. Public Enemy's unique appeal and success didn't go unnoticed by the bigger wrestling companies. Both WWE and WCW expressed interest in signing them after their rise in ECW. The duo initially chose WCW, where they found some success, including winning tag team championships. However, despite the titles and exposure on a national stage, Public Enemy never quite meshed with WCW's more polished and corporate environment. Their gritty, hardcore style was at odds with WCW's creative direction, leaving them somewhat out of place. In 1999, Public Enemy made a brief, tumultuous jump to WWE's competitive tag team division. Unfortunately, their WWE stint was marked by hostility and locker room politics rooted in resentment. Many in WWE's locker room held a grudge against them for having chosen WCW over WWE initially. This animosity was made painfully clear on television, where Public Enemy was viciously beaten in a one-sided match. This brutal defeat was more than just a storyline. It was a backstage message that Public Enemy was not welcome. The harsh treatment and lack of support led to their swift and quiet exit from WWE within months. Though their WWE chapter was short and rocky, it didn't tarnish Public Enemy's place in wrestling history. They remain iconic figures of ECW's hardcore era, kings of chaos who redefined what wrestling could be. 1. Taz, Peter Sinertia. At the pinnacle of this list stands Taz, born Peter Sinertia, one of the most electrifying and unforgettable figures to emerge from the hardcore wrestling scene of Extreme Championship Wrestling (ECW). With a stocky, muscular build and an icy, intense demeanor, Taz was a force to be reckoned with in the ring. His wrestling style combined raw power with technical precision, highlighted by devastating suplexes and near-flawless grappling skills. What made Taz truly stand out was his fiery intensity. He wasn't just competing, he was igniting every match with a fierce passion that captivated ECW fans. One of the most iconic images etched into the memories of wrestling fans is Taz's entrance. A towel draped over his head, eyes blazing with an unyielding focus and fury. This visual perfectly captured the essence of his persona, a relentless warrior who pushed himself and his opponents to the absolute limit. Central to his arsenal was the Tazmission, a brutal chokehold submission that forced countless wrestlers to tap out, becoming one of the most feared moves in the brutal world of ECW. His style wasn't just about showmanship, it was about authenticity, hard-hitting realism, and relentless competition. When Taz finally made his way to WWE, it wasn't a quiet debut. It was a seismic moment in wrestling history. At the 2000 Royal Rumble, in front of a sold-out crowd at the legendary Madison Square Garden, Taz was revealed as the surprise challenger to Kurt Angle, who was then undefeated and widely considered the company's golden boy. Few expected Taz to stand a chance, let alone to defeat Angle in such dramatic fashion. Yet, in a stunning upset, Taz forced Angle to tap out in under 5 minutes, shaking the wrestling world and creating one of WWE's most memorable moments. Sadly, injuries soon derailed what could have been a lengthy and impactful WWE career. Forced to step away from active competition, Taz seamlessly transitioned into a respected commentary role. Behind the microphone, he brought the same passion, intensity, and insightful understanding of wrestling that made him a star in the ring. Though his time as an active WWE wrestler was brief, Taz's impact was profound, proving that sometimes a single perfect moment is enough to etch a wrestler's name into the annals of history. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more valuable updates.